the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights and many of the protections, the lack of real oversight outside, these get the police themselves, until we really understand that these are the things that really have to change. We can burn as many cities as we want to. We can march as much as we want to. If the laws don't change, when we get burnt out from the initial emotional rush and excitement that goes along with doing that, and the people who want to talk about going to war, that ain't gonna bust a grape. You ain't been busting no grapes. You won't even go out and try to do nothing to help the brothers that's on the corner of your own block selling dope. So don't try to make me believe the one gang in America with legal power to shoot you and kill you, you about to mount up on horses and go out there and do nothing about. I remember having that mentality on so many levels. And it's important that we be able to, credible voices be able to say, man, we've got to stop thinking that the stuff that soothes our emotions and touches us in the immediate place where we upset, we hurt, that's not the change. 100 and something years of killing black people and policing black people specifically requires some real structural change in the institution of policing. And I ain't talking about BPD, the institution that is policing, and the laws that protect police officers.
Great point, brother. Do you feel that Baltimore City police department has made any strides in that direction?
Well, it's like Ray said, Baltimore's police department is under federal consent decree. Mm-hmm. Right, so they are one of three parties that entered into this consent decree, which means that they are somewhere that they weren't 5 years ago. The key piece is that union, right? The union at the local level, the union at the state level, and those folks who continually and dogmatically block the law changes that they know need to happen to make real change. When you go to the voting booth and you vote for politicians who refuse to receive control of the local police department, the person who literally tried to build herself off of what happened in 2015, got in office only to refuse the opportunity to receive control of the police department. People don't even know we're not under local control. Like, it's things that this has to be about information. And that's why this platform is important to me, because you're going to hear the fire, but you're going to be informed. And the people have to understand, man, that we got politicians that we about to vote again on Tuesday. I have not heard the conversation of local control of policing be a major topic in the conversation. The consent decree hadn't been a major topic in the conversation. I'm talking, it's been discussed, of course, but it has to become a major and centralized topic in the conversation, because if not, there won't be any accountability to whoever we render our vote to.
Real quick, Brother Mark, we mentioned consent decree a couple of times. There are people watching who do not know what the consent decree is. They've never heard of it. Explain it to us in terms that we can understand.
So after the death of Freddie Gray and the ensuing uprising, the Department of Justice came into Baltimore and they did an investigation, and they came Captain Obvious on us. They came back and said the practices of policing in Baltimore are imbalanced as it pertains to black communities, or just flat out racist, right? So they produced this huge report, and the report said that, looking into what we already knew, policing black people in a city like Baltimore was racist, and it was done wrong, and it was terrible. They came and they filed with the court for what is the federal consent decree, the last one that we believe we ever gonna see in America, the way that things have shifted in politics under Republican government. And the three parties in this consent decree. Party one is the city of Baltimore. Party two is the Department of Justice, and party three is the Baltimore Police Department. And they negotiated and negotiated and negotiated and all of that sort of thing to come up with terms of what the agreement they would come to, what work would be put in under this decree that would reform policing in Baltimore. The problem is it brings about no definite legislative changes. So the laws that cause for bad policing, even in context of the consent decree, have not changed. Right? And Ray know a lot more the policy side of it and probably can articulate it as well. But it's a court-ordered agreement that's under the governing of a federal judge that between the three parties, the Department of Justice, the Baltimore Police Department, and the City of Baltimore. The City of Baltimore being under the same legal representation, the BPD and the City of Baltimore. But in any other case, that would be a conflict of interest. They're going to tell you, me and you can't have the same lawyer if you was in my car and we had a car accident. Then my lawyer don't want to represent you because he's going to try to sue you for driving the car. You feel what I'm saying? But this is the kind of stuff that we have in place, right? And it's erroneous. And Ray, I'm gonna let you. Ray can talk a little bit more on the technical side of the decree itself.
Please, brother Ray.
So, to put it in layman's terms, the consent decree is a settlement. So, like Marvin said, the DOJ took the Baltimore City Police Department to federal court with a cornucopia of things that they were doing wrong, things that they call unconstitutional, and the consent decree is pretty much a settlement. So Baltimore Police Department says, okay, we was messing up and this is what's wrong and we willing to change. So the consent decree outlines 16 specific areas of reform that, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, 16 areas of reform that the police department has to undergo. So Marvin is right. The consent decree mandates changes in policies and practices. Okay. So it's procedural policy within the Baltimore Police Department and how they execute. But like he said, all of their protections come from a state level. Because we're not city controlled and we are a state agency, we have to go to Annapolis to get small changes with the police department, like redistricting has to go through our legislation. So he's right. For as long as I've been in this work, this topic has been kind of toxic for most political campaigns and in the campaign season, because everybody contradicts incidents like this when they run on a platform of, we're going to reduce crime, we're going to get people off the streets, when really the tool that they're using is dysfunctional and has been mistreating Black people since it's been incepted.
So who's responsible for ensuring that what came out of the consent decree in terms of making the necessary corrections within the police department, who's responsible for doing that?
The federal court. They're the actual judge assigned to this case, James K. Bradar, and he oversees these implementations. He's not a party affiliate, and he's already stood multiple times against the current administration to keep our consent decree going. So this whole consent decree is now under the purview of the federal court, and it can't change. It ain't going nowhere, and it's here until the police department is in 100% compliance. Our role as community and advocates is use this conduit to pressure the hell out of them. So really, like you said, a lot of people don't know, a lot of people don't believe, a lot of people don't trust, but really it's a new mechanism for us and we need to overwhelm it because, like you said, the legislation has to be what's changed, and we have to pressure these elected officials to make sure that the city can actually comply with what's written into this consent decree.
And so what do we, and I ask basic questions so that nobody can err. If you take away anything from this, if you listen to this conversation, you should walk away with something, some sort of first step. And so my thought is, how do we apply pressure to our elected officials or those who are interested in these positions? What do we do as the citizens of Baltimore to keep it in front of them?
So I think, like Marvin said, accountability becomes the key. So we've been kind of giving them a pass this campaign season because everything is virtual. They get to pick and choose what answers they address when they're looking at these conference calls.
Who asks the question.
And right. I mean, for real, they're picking the question. So that kind of gets bypassed. But one thing we got to do is start speaking through our votes. So there's nobody that's above 18 years old on the streets of Baltimore that can't vote. Unless they've committed voter fraud, they can vote. And that's the first step. We can actually galvanize our vote and put a candidate in office that is 100% about police reform.
If I can jump in right from the aspect of the question about progress, I think the greatest amount of progress that has been made is in the relationships that have been formed between people who care about this subject and our current police, and the police department, right? Because I would say that based on 5 years ago, you know, I had to learn that I still had some of 12, 13, 14-year-old Marvin in me. I was a grown man that loved my city, loved helping people, but still had the police can go in about their business. And now it's not like that. And I know in the work that I do, my relationships with people that are in the police department that do the work has translated into some amazing opportunities for the young people that I love and serve. Now, everybody don't have or know Marvin McKinstry. Every officer don't know one. Every kid in the street don't. But I'm talking about to the degree where there have been police officers who have caught a kid, did the rights, and instead of sending them to jail, said, go around here to the Yo Center. I'm going to call Mr. McKinstry. If you don't show up, then this is what you facing. But I'm going to give you an opportunity to do something different. So I definitely don't want to nullify the fact that we still have some legislative changes and some work to do to completely undermine the fact that there's some relationships in this process that have been built and worked. And listen, I've learned from the person who actually introduced me into the possibility of me trying to heal the relationship is she's now Colonel Cherie Briscoe, but she was then Major Cherie Briscoe, and she was the new commander in the Western District. And what wound up happening is beyond her uniform, I seen a sister that just cared about her people. You know what I'm saying? And she was willing to work with me to make sure that we could do something to help that community heal, right? Where I still serve today, where I'm still all the time. You know what I mean? So it took me from a place where it was all police or the police, because the institution still needs some fixing. But there's some people out there that do that work that really, really care about this city. And I'm saying that because those who really care about seeing some change in the more immediate, get to know some of the officers in your community, get to know and make the right connections to some people in your community, and you will find that they have a real heart, the same heart that you have for our people they have, and you be able to get some stuff done that don't mean handcuffs and going down to central booking all the time.
Brother Ray, and somebody, Sister Cassia, somebody made a comment about galvanizing. You talked about that. My question becomes, how do we get the citizens to care enough to want to vote? We get upset when things happen. We're ready to tear something down, cut somebody out, fuss at them, but we don't always take responsibility. You know what I mean? My question is, how do we encourage, motivate, educate our people so much so that they find voting important, that they want to do things? Because we can talk all day long, but what are you doing to affect change? And I'm going to let you ask the question, but we all have a level of power. Your level may be different from mine, so forth and so on. A level, we have our spheres of influence. And so when do we take responsibility for some of this?
So there's a saying
that part of it.
Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
I think Big Bro Ray kind of touched on it earlier in the conversation when he talked about policy. So when you talk about the average citizen, the policy aspect of it is what people aren't aware of. And so, like he mentioned, on the actual day-to-day how we live level, none of that change is felt. None of that change is apparent. Right. And so when you think about the mind of a citizen, people are like, you know, all of these things continuously happen, all of these so-called, you know, policies come into place, but we aren't feeling it. We aren't feeling it. So to a citizen, that seems like just another promise that goes unfulfilled. And so it gets to a point where people feel let down, lied to, and manipulated, because the little bit of change that's happening isn't a felt change. And so when you ask the question of, well, how do you mobilize citizens, and how do you get citizens to be more educated, to basically give a damn, you have to do something or affect something that they can feel. Because people respond to stuff that they can feel. You can't sit a person down and say, hey, listen, this is the part of the policy that's been changed. This is how it benefits you. They're going to look at you like, I don't speak that language. I don't understand policy. I understand what I can feel. I understand stuff that improves my life. And until you can give a citizen that, you can't expect them to understand the changes happening that they don't see and understand.
Brother Ray, what are your thoughts?
So I think that's the hardest thing that we have to do, is try to reincorporate a disenfranchised people. So there's this old saying that when racism redlined our communities, they buried us with the biggest weapon in the world, but knew we would never use it. And that's the vote. So really, we have districts of compressed Black people that, if they voted, could change the whole paradigm of Baltimore city politics. But because they've been disenfranchised, they haven't seen results from politicians in decades, they feel like, what's the use of voting? So we got to kind of start with educating on why they need to vote and what has been the outcome of us not voting for so long, to kind of push the fact that now we can use this weapon against the system that gave it to us. And
you know that, I'm sorry.
We have to also promote the changes that we are actually making, the strides that are happening. So both Sean and Marvin know we all come from the same spot. And now there's a change because there's a Ray Kelly, activist and advocate from Sandtown, that sits at this table when they actually draft police policies. And there are a lot of rooms that we never had access to before the actual consent decree. People have to kind of learn this process. There's a lot about, we're not seeing results, but there's actually a monitoring plan that comes out every year that dates what has to be done by when. So there hasn't been a good educational push from the police department or the monitoring team, for that matter, to say, you'll start seeing these results on the street in November of 2020. It's in the monitoring plan. So we've had people for a year saying, I don't see, while we're working on policies and curriculums that they could also be a part of. And we should be directing them to the plan. Look, this is how it's supposed to happen. These are the dates and opportunities that you can get engaged. And I don't know, education is going to have to be the key to turning around. Baltimore's voting situation, because this prowess to push the agenda.
I think to a degree, we also talking about reinvestment, right? And because you used the term, Ray, which was appropriate term, the disenfranchised thought process of Black people as it pertains to the election. This mayoral election, by the press and by people who people look to be good sources of information, has literally been treated like the NBA. You know, the NBA, you literally at the beginning of the season can go and pick on both sides, East Conference and West Conference. The 8 teams is going to be in the playoffs because it's so imbalanced, right? And then you go from there to where, you know, you pretty much they narrowing it down, and you got so much identity politics and all that stuff that happens. That's the reality that we're facing with an election coming up on Tuesday. So I say all that to say at this point, we got to look at some accountability. To me, I don't care who wins. I don't care who's in the seat. If the people unify to understand their strength, it won't matter who's in the seat, because we'll be able to hold whoever is there accountable. True leadership in Baltimore has been too ready to align itself with political, with people in elected office, as opposed to making sure that the relationship is one where, look, if you don't do this, then we're going to come back and we're going to be the voice that stands for the people in opposition to, look, I mean, we can just outline things that were promised that never happened. The minimum wage, the $15 an hour minimum wage that was vetoed by the very person that ran on it. We can also look at this space and place and police reform that from an inside perspective, right, literally came down to the point that we were saying we better work the relationships, because under the current legislative statutes and things of that nature, even the consent decree ain't going to do nothing but bring about some technological changes, some changes in training. We can hope for what may be able to come out of that. But the citizenry has got to move, and the leaders in Baltimore, people who are leaders in Baltimore, whether you're a thought leader, whether you're a leader of people, have got to make sure if you make that alignment or allegiance with that person in that seat, that first of all, it don't benefit your personal brand. And secondly, that you put yourself in position to be able to hold that person accountable. Elected officials in Baltimore are too celebritized.
I want to ask from the live comment section. Danielle asks, how do we educate the youth to do their research on who's going to work best for their communities and families when they see no hope from experience? Any thoughts?
I look at it from this perspective, right? Youth have followed me out of the street, off the street corner, into a job where they didn't know anybody there. They didn't know anything about working. They trusted me. Their willingness to invest and to follow was because of the relationship they had with me. Sister Danielle, we who have the relationships with our young people have got to leverage that relationship with the young person to help that reinvestment, or really, because for them, it's not rehabilitation in some cases, it's habilitation. They've never participated and they don't believe in the process. I mean, and this is another one of those areas. Elections in Baltimore is generational trauma. We for generations have not gotten the results that we've expected out of elected officials, while the people who have been in leadership have loved the same politician that don't give you what you need, right? So we who have the relationships with those young people that they trust, we can't deceive them. We got to keep it real with them and help them reinvest and make an initial investment in the process.
Any other thoughts?
And I think it's important for us also to reintroduce this at a school level. So as a city, we haven't taught civics since the 1980s, I believe, where we kind of jumped from teaching our children what their civic responsibilities are to citizenship, which is all in jeopardy under this administration. So I think we stopped instituting the importance of voting in our community 30 years ago. And those 2 or 3 generations in that time have no knowledge of the power of the vote, the need of the vote, or the influence of the vote. And I feel like that's the master plan of the system. You continue to push people away from a process, and then they become victim to the process and subservient to the process.
Good thought. Anybody else, Brother Sean, any thoughts on that? We can't hear Brother Sean.
Yeah, I couldn't really hear, so I missed a large portion of the conversation. So I apologize for that.
So the question was, Danielle asked, how do we educate the youth to do their research on who's going to work best for their communities when they see no hope from experience?
I think the first thing that we have to do is be more inclusive. I know for me, when I was a young person, stuff like the power to vote or how the process worked, I was clueless about it because I didn't have anybody teaching me or set me down and explaining the importance of it to me. The way that I'm figuring out how to understand and communicate with the youth is by being a parent to young kids. A lot of times, because we're so used to being around kids who understand and grasp complex concepts and everything, we think that as children that they have this inherent understanding of what the expectation is or what they're supposed to do. When the truth of the matter is, we need to grab these young people by the hand, sit them down, and educate them one-on-one in terms that they understand, in the language that they can understand and that they can later go and apply to their peers. So because we don't have that part of the education in the curriculum, because we don't have that part of the interaction between us and the young people, that information, that understanding that we know to be intrinsic, it gets lost to them. It gets lost to them. So we can't hold them accountable for what they don't know because we haven't done our due diligence in making sure that they know and that they understand.
Which goes back to me to responsibility. Because let's say civics is never reintroduced in the public school system. When does the village take up that charge to educate and to mobilize our young people to inform them and help them to make the connection so that voting does become essential?
So let's talk about the village, right?
Yeah.
100% of this panel does something that many leaders in Baltimore don't do. 100% of this panel tonight, including our hosts, are Baltimore City residents.
Sure.
We have people in too many positions of power and authority, whether they're cabinet positions, over agencies in this city, whether it's people who pastor churches, people who lead other faith and community organizations, people who getting grants to do work in this city that don't vote here. You don't have no real stake. You don't live here. What happens in Baltimore public school don't affect you because you won't even send your kids there. You don't have to because you don't live in Baltimore City.
Straight up.
I had somebody ask me, Mom, you done well for yourself, man, because it was important to me. Like it's still important for me, even when me and my grandmother moved from where we are to be in Baltimore City. Why won't you leave the city? I can't pastor here and not live here. To me, it's disingenuous. I don't vote here. I'm not a stakeholder. I raised my kids under my care. They went to Baltimore City Public Schools and graduated all but one from Baltimore City Public Schools. All but one of my 5 graduated from Baltimore Public Schools. And that's because she went down to Georgia with her mama, right? The reality of it is, how much investment can we expect for people who don't have residence here?
Wow.
You're not affected by the vote. So you're not, if you're a leader,
I want to jump in.
And I don't want to seem like I got you, D. Will. I don't want to seem like I'm jumping on any particular group. But if I lead a group of people, I have the trust of a group of people to lead, and I don't vote here, how important am I going to make the electoral process in my sphere of influence?
Straight up.
You want to jump in, Shot?
Yeah.
I thought that was Dwayne.
Oh, that was Dwayne. Okay, go ahead, Dwayne.
No, I wanted to jump.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm back, man. I was having some technical difficulties. So I've caught some of the question because of the technical difficulty. I wanted to catch up and say this. The first thing that I wanted to say is we talked about having, right? And I think I agree with Marvin on this. I think that we have grown to some levels in certain areas. When we talk about injustices and when we talk about history in this. There's a lot to unpack concerning that. It's not just one place, one issue. It's a lot concerning that. When we come up to the present day time now, we're talking about the village. The best place to start here is first, the village definitely starts with parents, right?
Yeah.
I think that the second place is the school system. And I think that the school system, me just speaking, I think that the school system has done a old job in the village because a part of their thinking is a model that is modeled after how can I move the kids on instead of giving them really what they need to be what they need to become. So I think if we really look at a word here, and there's a word that I really that we're having systems is a word called truth, right? We have a lot of people who are intelligent enough to hold positions. We have a lot of people who are intelligent enough to speak well in the position, but they aren't truthful in the position. And I think what Marvin is saying, what he's saying is that there are not enough truthful individuals. We're not saying people who don't have mistakes or people who haven't made mistakes. We're talking about truthful individuals who are making an impact at their level to help move these systems forward so that it can progress. What we have in most systems now are people who are flat out liars, people who are comfortable with getting their 80, 90, $100,000 a year, but not doing enough impact to move these systems from a raggedy place to a more prosperous place. And I think that when you act this, when you really look at this, when you really look at what is happening, individuals can't be truthful because it goes back to what he says. What Marvin said, individuals can't be truthful because they have no real investment within themselves. They have no real investment to give to others because their investment is falsified. Their investment isn't real. They came from listen. They came from milk. Came from all of these other places. Truth be told, I might as well even just go here. They didn't go to schools where it was hard knock life for them. They went to Poly City, places that I'm just going to just be honest, that was academically for them easy. But grow up in Walbrook and Northern, where I went. You understand, Douglas, and where you kind of had to work through the issues of different calamities that came your way. And I think these are the individuals that are real enough to deal with a real city. Baltimore is not Wyoming. Baltimore is Baltimore. It is a one-of-a-kind city. It is a one-of-a-kind place. It is a one-of-a-kind situation here. And you have to be an individual that is able to impact beyond just your voice and your education. Can I say that one more time? And I don't want to you've got to have impact beyond just your voice and just your education. And this city is so hung up on individuals who are educated and individuals who have people rallying behind them that we don't even recognize the people who have true impact in our communities. All right, let me go here because I only got 5 minutes and I got to get off of here. Get off of here. You want to know why we aren't moving? When I look at this election season, I'm sorry, y'all, because y'all got y'all's in. Let me just get mine out. When we look at this election season and we look at people who are running, I look at people who are supporting individuals just because they are their friends, just because they know them. But the truth of the matter is they aren't putting any work in. And I'm trying to be careful and not say no names here because, I ain't scared of none of them. But because I'm going to just tell it, like it is, right? How is it that you can support a councilman, right? How is it that you can support a councilwoman and they haven't done any work? All they done was give you enough favors for you and your nation, but yet they haven't done any work in the community. Nobody knows them. The only organizations that know them are the organizations that they feel as though that counts. And so the reality of it is how can we move forward if all you're doing is a systematic system that is just reconnecting but not impacting anything? Come on. Yeah. Come on, y'all. Let's talk about this tonight. when we look at these injustices, Marvin said something so profound early, and then I'm gonna shut up. He said, you charge 6 officers with wrong crimes. I'm not even gonna call her name tonight. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. Because she was so emotional that she allowed her emotions to mismanage her judgment. But guess what Baltimore did? We elected her again because she's in my crew. She's in my clique. She's done something for my organization. Come on, man. Come on. What we doing, Baltimore? What we doing? Because y'all can't say y'all want to change and keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's insanity.
Brother Ray, what do y'all think about what Dwayne just said?
Well, I think he's right on a lot of levels, but we have to recognize as a people that convicting police officers ain't really the way of the land in the United States. And there is no book on how to do it best. There's no cookie cutter method. And I think just being able to get to a point where these officers are being arrested and are being tried is progression. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I know I've been arrested a lot of times, serious charges, where they hit me with 100 charges and I got a plea bargain my way down to what's going to be the conviction, where that process should have taken place. I don't know if it did, but we're talking about convicting police officers. They had, for lack of a better term, a jury of their peers. So when you have this mechanism, this systemic structure, picking the jury and already having this persona of what a police officer is and what he does and how hard his job is, that's another hurdle that we have to overcome, is being able to actually convict police officers in this society where they are seen as the protectors of our country.
Brother Sean, where you at with it?
I had when I was talking when the DOJ and the lawyer did their press conference the other day, going back to when the charges was levied against the 6 officers here in Baltimore, and hearing that attorney say we can't make a rush to judgment because we learned what happens when you do that in Baltimore. Everybody walks, right? And from learning and understanding what the thin line is between what you see on the video and what's actual chargeable statutes, and how much of that can be protected by that job, it's not difficult for me with that level of understanding to understand the necessity of, for lack of a better term, patience. So I found myself kind of in the thought process of, it's good that they're going to try to do it right, but then there's that in between of the people who are fueled in their vitriol right now, that are going for the gusto in Minneapolis and getting right charges, and the bridge in between those two, right? That's a tough place. You know what I'm saying? But again, it's about the level of understanding. When you're talking about trying to convict the police officer of what people wanted to be first-degree murder, a lot of people don't know you got to prove he engaged that man with intent to kill. That's one of the things consistent with first-degree murder. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with the way that they charged it, but what I'm saying, a lot of what fuels our energy and our emotion towards this is a lack of understanding. And we've got to take the time, those who do know, to be courageous enough to not worry about being popular. I learned a long time ago, popularity and truth rarely walk together. The people who are the most popular got the most popular opinions. They're socially correct. They politically correct. They rarely walk in truth. I watch people try to educate people who are totally invested in popular opinion. You try to invest it and you try to inform them on Facebook with truth, John. They ain't gonna hear that. All they know is what's being said, what they got from timelines and YouTube, right? It's a different level of understanding. That's why the sphere. That's why the sphere of influence becomes the more important thing. How many people can I grab that trust me, right? To be able to educate so that we have a proper understanding of this. They talking about potential protests here in Baltimore. So somebody sent me a thing that's floating around on some social media. I haven't seen it on mine. Talking about an inner harbor protest about what's going on in Minneapolis. I've been in the hoods in West Baltimore all day. Emerson Village, Sandtown, Poems. I've been out there all day long today, right? And I kind of had the temperament of what's going on in the thought process of the people that are in those spaces. And the reality of it is, Baltimore too busy. Baltimore hood is too busy burying our dead from this murder epidemic, and we ain't even really got our attention on it like the Facebookers have their attention on it. The people who spend all day on Facebook, y'all, they got their intention on it, right? But the dudes who down there getting it how they live ain't thinking about that. So what we then have to worry about is the provokers, the people that'll come and provoke or want to try to set something off, which was a hugely understated portion of people in 2015. There were people who wasn't from here that was kicking it off and going back to where they live, right? Because they had some sort of political agenda. So we got to be able to have these real conversations when it comes down to this. The people in the hood, I've been in the hood all day today because I wanted to know. I wanted to know where my people's thought processes were. And this ain't nothing they said to me. I may have coined the phrase, but the conversations too busy burying our dead because we still in the middle of a murder epidemic. I rode down Pennsylvania Avenue today. It looked like Pennsylvania Avenue, no mask included. I got out in the 1500 block of Pennsylvania Avenue and talked to some of my young dudes. Stopped on Moses Street and got my car wiped off. I'm trying to tell you, I've been in the trenches today. The trenches thought process ain't where Facebook is. Ain't thinking about no protests. But we got provokers. We got people that'll come and want to try to set it off and try to have the hood respond so we can be the sacrifice. Man, I'm telling y'all right now, we gonna keep it real, because if I catch you in my city trying to be a provoker, I'm gonna hold you to the law get there. I ain't gonna tell you how tight I'm gonna hold you. I'm gonna hold you to the law get there.
Brother Sean, go ahead, man. Then we're gonna get to Dwayne.
Man, listen, there ain't too much to say. Big bro hit it on the nose, man. And it's some of the same stuff that we seeing going on in Minneapolis. Is it's a lot of people that's not from there that's coming there and they kick the stuff off, but the people who live there is being charged with, what's happening. And we seen that happen in our city. And I think Brother Shorter had hit me up today and was kind of like a little bit worried about, protests or whispers of protests that's going to happen in Baltimore. I'm telling you right now, man, I don't hold no office seat. I'm not a guy that spend my time worrying about being politically correct. 2015 taught me a lot. 2015, taught me a lot. But I'm telling you straight up, you come back to my city on some bullshit, you ain't got to worry about the police dealing with you. I'm going to pull up, man, some of my homeboys. We're going to get you right.
Brother Wayne, where you at with it, man?
I think as I read some of these comments and I want to just go back and give my little piece because I gotta run. I seen a comment that says, why not divide and conquer those with legislative passions partnering together, forth and so forth. It's a very great comment. I think the issue here is what most people don't understand, because we live in a city that is so, when we talk about the political system, we live in a city that is about egos. is driven by egos, and when something is driven by egos, it doesn't work. It doesn't want to work with people on the ground, right? When people have their own agendas, when we talk about corruption in the police department, right? We also got to talk about corruption in the school system. We also got to talk about corruption in politics. That's why we've gone through several mayors at this point in time, because corruption is happening. And let me be clear, corruption is happening against African American people. These people are not managing, or they're not over Caucasian American or Hispanic America. They're over African American people. And the truth be told, some of these individuals, yes, I stand on my own. This is not the views of Tavon, Marvin, or anybody else. I stand on my own tonight.
The disclaimer.
When we look at these individuals, the disclaimer, when we look at these individuals, you got to ask yourself a question. One thing for certain, I'm in agreement that the police department needs to make changes. They are making changes from what I've seen. I'm in agreement that there are white officers who are born with a level of hate and racism in them, and they carry it over into a legislative position like an officer, and then they come and taint neighborhoods with that. I'm in agreements with all of that. But I'm also in agreements that before we unpack that, we've got to unpack the top. And the top is City Hall. The top is government officials. And when we look at government officials whose hands have been in the cookie jar, come on, whose hands have been in the cookie jar, so their hands have been caught in the cookie jar, and they're supposed to be serving African American people. It now becomes like, hold up, wait a minute. There are so many different layers to this conversation of injustice, because injustice for me is not just about a white officer killing a black man. That's one portion of it. And hear me clearly, I'm extremely frustrated about it. I'm extremely upset about it. But when I also look at injustice, I'm looking at injustice of individuals we voted in that get into office and do things against their own kind, make decisions against their own kind that does not help in the long run. So the reality becomes is the onus got to come back on us to educate it about the systems of policing, right? I heard somebody ask me a question, and I just need to throw this out there. In a case where somebody is resisting arrest, because somebody was like, well, they don't have the right to put their knee in your back. Training teaches, because I was an ex-cop, training teaches us in a situation of resisting, you can. However, it doesn't give you the right to rest on an individual like a pillow or a couch. That was absolutely out of order. However, when we understand the trainings that officers get, what they can do and what they can't do. And I think the problem is we aren't educated enough. We aren't educated enough on what their systems are, what their trainings are. Why? Because the agency hasn't even been honest with us about what their trainings are, what their systems are, how they get trained. And so that's why we come to the place of understanding like, oh, they can't do that. When in all actuality, they can, they just can't go that far with it. I think that we need to get education on what they can do and what they can't do, and then we can make a educated response, a moral response that says, hey, look, you can't do that. You can't go that far. You can't say this. I've had individuals pull me up. I had individuals that when you pull them over, they said, why you asking me for my license registration? Because at first contact I can, and then I must tell you what I'm pulling you over for. Then at that point, there's a conversation of what needs to happen after that. And I think too many, and I just got to be real tonight. I think that too many people allow their egos and hate within them to muster up to say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, but you haven't even researched the law. You're going to get frustrated with an individual before you ever research the law? Come on. Look, because let me tell you something. It's one thing for certain. I've been pulled over by cops, been mistreated by cops. But let me tell you, every time I walked away victorious. Why? Because I know the law. And because I know the law, I know how to talk to them. I know what to say to them. It's not the fact that I'm weakening myself or humbling myself. I know what to say to them because I know the law. When you don't know it, you're subjected to certain situations. And not that it's right. Let me put that in the hashtag. Not that it's right, but you're subjected to certain situations, and then frustration happens, and then exchange happens, and then who's to say what can happen after that when you're dealing with an individual who has hate and racism in their heart?
Good point. Let me ask you guys this. Where do you think we are with how important is it for there to be solid relationships between the police department and the residents of the city?
It's important, man. That was the buffer between a lot of this and generations prior to this one. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then I'm gonna tell y'all the truth, man. It's a couple times when I was out in the street as a young guy. I mean, young, like teens. Police got me. They would take my money, turn me up a little bit. I ain't care. They let me go. This stuff ain't happening to the people that's in the street, though. It's not happening to the people who are the hardcore and hardened criminal. This is what the problem is when we start talking about what's happening with these in custody deaths. It's not the drug dealer. It's not the gun-toting dude. They got a sixth sense or intuition that gets them out of harm's way 2 blocks before the police get there. It's Sandra Bland. For as much as Freddie Gray was in the hood, he wasn't that. You know what I mean? So when we look at this topic, one of the things that we continually miss is that it's not happening to what we would quote unquote consider the hardened criminal. And I'm going to use terms like that because I've been there and done that. I've been to prison twice in my life, right? It don't happen to people like that. It's happening in traffic stops. It's happening in a quote unquote check fraud investigation. And I don't know if I done veered off topic. The point I'm making is simple. When you see this, there's a predatory nature to it. You're not doing this to the dude, and my prayers have been with the young man whom I've had the pleasure of meeting and talking to, and he's a great person and a decent police officer and a decent human being who's really youth-driven in a lot of the things that he does with his personal life and his job. My prayers go out to him and his family being shot down in Fells Point the other night. You know, we don't want to see that level of action taken against any human being. We don't want to see those kinds of things happen. But the reality of it is there's a predatory nature to what's happening with these in custody situations because it's never the dude like the dude that was toting the gun driving that car down in Fells Point last night that's dying, or the other night that's dying. The people that are dying are people who they pray. Freddie was a little dude. Freddie wasn't that. Sandra Bland. You know what I mean? Wasn't that? This the part of it that breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart because when I see that part of it, it makes me think you may really have grounds for first-degree murder with a cat like this dude out in Minneapolis. Because you wasn't going to do that to me.
I'm good.
You wasn't going to do that to Marvin McKinstry. You and your 4 friends wasn't going to be successful doing that with me.
And why not?
You wasn't even going to try. Because you're going to, first of all, look at me and understand that you can't get away with that. Y'all know I made national news in a video with a situation with a police officer where he practiced restraint and he don't practice with the average black man in Baltimore. I'll take responsibility for the fact to say that I should have and could have did some things differently in that encounter. But the reality of it is the only thing that I said about it on social media was a Facebook post telling young people who follow me, who believe that I'm a great influence and example to them, don't try what I try, because I know in my heart of hearts, it ain't going to work out for them the same way. Mm-hmm. We can sit there and try to make it seem like it was about who he was, right? But the reality, and I don't take nothing away from him. I know, so I've never had the opportunity to meet him again, but I know some officers that know him, say he's a stand-up guy, whatever. So I don't want to make it a character attack against him. But the reality of it was that was never even an option with me standing there in my bow tie, my dress clothes, and sounding as though I can articulate myself a little bit. There's a consistency to the people that this happens to. And we've got to be willing to identify that and deal with that and talk real about that. If we don't have those conversations, there's no real accountability. I'm not glorifying the situation that I was in because I still to this day don't want anybody to have an encounter with a police officer where they don't do everything in their power to try to protect themselves from erroneous arrest or from abuse, right? But at the same time, we got to look at it for what it was. It don't happen. It don't work out like that. Why I could have been George Floyd. Why wasn't I?
And I think at this time, we hear the police talk a lot about bias, or as they like to say, implicit bias. But I think now in these past weeks with the Amy Cooper situation, where we can't call these biases implicit biases when we see just a random white lady out there trying to use the tact of playing on a police officer's implicit bias to enforce on a black man. So really, that's conscious bias and it's weaponized. And then we have a George Floyd situation to remind us of what can happen from an Amy Cooper situation. Mm-hmm. So really, she was threatening that man with what happened to George Floyd, mm-hmm. and that should be terrorism. But
we got to also remember that Amy Cooper wasn't the first one. There was a whole meme created about the lady that called the police on the people for having a cookout.
Yep.
She became a whole meme. Right? It's something to this. When you see the image of a George Floyd and posted up next to it is the image of the young man that shot up the church down in North Carolina, mm-hmm. with some Burger King. Another young man who they just captured for double murder sitting on the ground with an officer giving him some water. Mm-hmm. But George Floyd, we gotta want to have these real hard conversations, man. We got to. Right. We got to. We can't be so anything. And I want people to understand something, right? I pastor the Victory House Worship Center Church, and I pastor from my service in the street, right? I thank God for the opportunity and the privilege to pastor in the institution, right? But that title ain't gonna never silence me on the truth. It's never gonna silence me on the truth. And the truth is there's a predatory nature to this. There is some implicit bias. And we can't want to hope that things are better so much that we lie to ourselves or the people in our spheres of influence to tell them contrary to that fact.
Understand. And I like to go a step further. I think it's inherent bias. I think the role of a police officer inherits those biases because when they go to these communities, whoever their supervisor is telling them what to expect, and this is what we do, and this is no longer an implicit bias. They inherit a conscious bias, and I'm sure they're taught to use that bias if a situation goes left. So we know that there's always that I feared for my life piece that they throw out at the end. And because of police protections, that gets them over. And we have to I saw a question on there, how do we counter those types of situations? And what we have to do is continue to advocate for what's right. Just like with the civics, we shouldn't sit back and say that there's no civics in school. We should be fighting for civics in school as we educate our young people. And it's the same way. We shouldn't be talking about how do we counter the Amy Coopers in the world and the country when we know we got to advocate because for real, that's domestic terrorism. We should be fighting to make sure there are laws that prohibit that type of bias used as a weapon because we're always the victims in those situations.
So I'm going to ask this question as a follow-up to the police question in terms of the relationship. Where do you think we are in the city of Baltimore in terms of making amends between the residents and the police department? Have we made any progress since we have the consent decree in place and we've had the Freddie Gray experience? Where are we in making amends or building those relationships?
I want to kind of jump on that first. Let me just say a piece on that because I'm real passionate about that piece because I feel like the problem within Baltimore City is we don't have trust. The first step in any trust building endeavor is relationship building. And I feel like that's the piece where Baltimore dropped the ball. So we've had so much instability, corruption, distractions since our consent decree process started that there hasn't been enough consistency to actually build trust. There's been 4 shakeups in the police department. We're on our 3rd mayor since the consent decree. We've had Detective Souter, the Gun Trace Task Force, the trial of the officers, where everything has caused these shifts in personnel and who's doing what in this process. And we missed the ball completely on building relationships so we can move forward. And sadly, that's where we need to start now.
God has blessed me and a few colleagues to be able to establish a 501c3 called Reconcile Baltimore. And the key point of Reconcile Baltimore is to do the work of healing between the Baltimore Police Department and the residents of Baltimore City. And I'm grateful for that opportunity, which I do in my personal space believe, in my personal thought, believe that that's progress. This is where the mistake is normally made. 2 things can't happen. I can't become so enamored by the opportunity that what I'm focused on has been given, that I don't look for the capacity to be built or the expansion to happen citywide for more people that can help with this process not become involved. What I'm saying is, we got Reconcile Baltimore. It don't matter if they don't pick up Ray's thing or Sean's thing or the other person's thing, or allowing them to be able to say, well, we're working with Reconcile Baltimore, so something else good we don't have to work with. I believe that's where a lot of the issue and the problems lie. Can y'all hear me? Because I ain't on the screen.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm not on the screen. I still see Ray. Okay. I didn't know if there was something wrong. I cannot be so excited in my opportunity that I don't see to it that expands to other people in other areas and other communities that have great things to contribute to this conversation. I can't get my 5 minutes of fame on the news, and because they calling my name or waving my banner, or because I'm in a place where I become an advocate for BPD, right? Such that I'm turning my back to the reality that there's still some work that need to be done. So I do believe we made some progress. I'm excited about what Reconcile Baltimore is going to be able to bring, because without putting out too much information, the things that we are going to be able to do are things that are going to go to the core and the root of some of the matters. And when I tell you, it blew me away that just on an ask, BPD was at a place just on an ask where their response to us wanting to do this was absolutely, let's do it. It's unhinged, uncensored. We are not becoming advocates for them, but I believe that in order for the problem can't be fixed without some genuine healing. And it's not the community versus the police department, but the recognizing that the community is a part of the police department. The police department is a part of the community.
I'm gonna ask one. Did you want to jump in on that, Brother Sean, before we move forward?
No. He handled that.
Okay. I want to ask one final question. We talked about a myriad of things tonight, and brought up a number of issues and talked about progress a little bit. I'm one for next steps. What's tangible? What can we actually do? If you guys had to identify a strategic plan for resolving some of the issues in the city of Baltimore, what would be the top 3 things on that list, or the focal point, the top 3 focal points of that strategic plan? No matter what your direction is, what do you see as the major issues that we need to bring attention to put a plan to, and what will be the first steps to putting it in place?
So this is exactly why I wanted you to do this, Tavon, but at the same time, it's the headache that comes along with wanting you to do this, Tavon, because my answer won't be as direct as your question, because my ongoing stance is we all have our own sphere of influence. We all have our own gift and our own lane. Everybody is not going to do what Ray Kelly has the ability to do. I believe true community is a celebration of diversity, and I think Ray Kelly has to ignite the fire in the lane and with the opportunities that God has given him to be able to promote change. Marvin McKinstry is trusted by young people in this city. He's trusted by the dudes that are still in the hood and on the corner. I've got to work that sphere of influence that I have in those circles to try to promote the conversation of what change really looks like, whether it's the legislative change, whether it's the healing and reconciliation that comes with bringing people together in relationships, with the accountability to a police department that I believe has some people in it that really wants the best for our city. It's multi-layered, and we all have to look at what we individually and personally have been given, and based on what we've been given, that's how we set the 3 priorities and we do the work. Now, the greater portion of it, or the larger spectrum or scope of it, is the fact that while Marvin McKinstry has his over here and Ray has his over there, Marvin McKinstry and Ray have a relationship and brotherhood that brings that work together because it's all interconnected. Dr. Andre Bunley, one of my mentors and one of the leaders of the men's movement, always says there's 6 degrees of separation, and in a town as small as Baltimore, 82.2 square miles of land, everybody knows everybody. Not everybody knows somebody. And you say everybody knows somebody that knows somebody knows somebody, and that's the way that they said it, but everybody knows everybody. So when you get to doing your thing over here, I get to doing my thing over there, we've got to be conscious to look to see where those things interconnect.
Brother Ray, what you got?
So my quick, immediate answer and direct is vote, vote, vote. We got to vote. We got to do what we can to get engaged. One of my slogans is always get involved, be involved, and stay involved. But then I have to also kind of have this long, drawn-out answer that Marvin has, where I think the first step, for real, our priority should be stabilizing our legislator and our representation, and then establishing with all of the Baltimore residents what those top 3 priorities are. I don't think it's my priorities are going to be different from the next person's priority, but we should have our representatives in our government bring people together so we can establish what are the priorities of the greater community so we can address them. But for real, the first and most important thing we have to do in this city is stabilize, because we've been shaky as shit for 5 years. And I mean, we're like becoming that laughing stock where it's now time to grab the reins of this city, start holding people accountable, and start that progression forward again.
Brother Sean, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to take a page out my wife's book. Like Marvin was saying, man, each of us, we have our own lanes. We got our own sphere of influence. And what my wife always reminds me of is the importance of making sure my household is straight before I do anything. And for me, that's where it starts, because I can't be my best self if my house is divided. I can't be my best self if I'm not preaching the same gospel to my family that I'm preaching to the world. So if we could all reach into our immediate circle, which is our household, and get that under control, then the rest is easy, because like Marvin and like Ray said, the shit that we have inside of us that make us who we are, we born with that. That's not nothing we gotta spend much time on. We can wake up out of our sleep and get right into it, because it's a part of the fiber of our existence. So get your household together, get your family in proper alignment, then go out there into the world and do something. You don't got to do everything. You don't got to do stuff that's not within the scope of who you are, but just do something. And that little bit of something is enough to add to the collective that's doing whatever they got to do.
Man, you couldn't you spoke the sentiments of my heart. I feel like we've been talking about spheres of influence all night. We all have within arm's reach somebody, if it's only one person whose life we can influence. And if we are intentional, if we understand how powerful we are in our roles, and if we are intentional about positively impacting and influencing the minds of those who are within arm's reach of us, that's the start.
Facts.
I think that's the start. And if we are consistent, if we stay engaged, and if we are moving people, if we are intentional about moving our community forward, it's gotta start. And I don't want to bring Bible into it, but charity begins at home. And then it spreads abroad. You know what I mean? So if your house is on a firm foundation, then, because you never know, when you're teaching those who are within your household or within arm's reach of you and your family, they go out and they spread it, and then they spread it, and then they spread it. But we got to be intentional about building our village. We got to be intentional about building our communities, because if not, it's going to fall to the wayside, and then we are reactional. Then we react. We're not proactive. You know what I mean? Doing the work at home is proactive. Teaching your children right from wrong, that's proactive. Teaching them the importance or the power of your vote, that's proactive. But we get mad and we get angry when somebody who's corrupt or somebody made the bad decision, now we want to kick and scream. But I feel like I love that point. If we are intentional and if we recognize how powerful we are as men and women within our communities, I may not ever have a major platform. I may not ever speak in front of a large group of people, but if I teach my nieces and nephews right from wrong or what to do, I've done my job.
Yes, sir.
I've done my job.
Right.
And so I have to be, okay, make a decision every day. Am I going to teach right from wrong, or am I going to teach what's good, or am I going to teach what's bad? And that's not always by what we say.
It's demonstrated.
We teach by what we do. We teach through our actions. We teach through how we treat people. Good, bad, or indifferent. That's how we teach. And if we're conscious of that on a daily basis, then I think we'll do better.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna give it to Brother Marvin so he can give us his final thoughts.
So I'm not shifting all the way to final thoughts just yet. I want to first and foremost, man, on the watch party, the views have been kept up around 50 people the entire time. I always say it's a privilege whenever you get people that's interested in hearing what you have to say. And I want to thank the people for being on here. I want to thank people for every comment. I still see Jeff, my man Jeff Shorter, putting comments up here, man. If I didn't have to go through 1,000 miles of red tape, I would have had you on here with us, brother Jeff. Great man. Who works in BPD. And I want to thank my panelists tonight. I want to thank Brother Sean. I want to thank my big brother Ray, and I want to thank Lord Bro Dwayne Williams for being on with us tonight. I do want to leave room if there are any questions. Because, so let me say this. On Monday, the follow-up to this show. All right, on Monday, by special request, the follow-up to this show is going to feature Senator Jill Carter, Brother Davon Love. I might have to hijack Ray and bring him back, because that conversation is going to focus more on the legislative perspective of changes. These are the people, Senator Carter, who's in Annapolis, and Brother Davon Love from an amazing organization known as Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, who leads from the policy side of advocacy, going to Annapolis and making those things happen, because all of the fiery speaking and talk won't mean a thing if we can't get the necessary policy changes in place to make sure that proper governing over the police department in Baltimore and throughout the state is taking place. So what I want to do, since we do now our regular showtime, regular showtime is going to be an hour. We went 2 hours tonight because we were sitting right here in this space with the situation with Brother Floyd, and I didn't want to have it hinged or to have it bridled, if you will, by time constraints. It was my heart that we would be able to speak, but more naturally, we'll be going for an hour. So I hope that you guys will tune in on Monday. And I want to give an opportunity if there are any questions. Shaka, man, let me shout out my man Shaka Pitts.
Yeah, man.
Shaka is the engineer. If you want to put your face on here, Shaka, put your face up here, man. Y'all don't get to see the brother, but your comments popping up, everything flowing smooth and doing what it do is because of the great man Shaka Pitts, who does his great work with us at the Westside Youth Opportunity Center. Maybe I shouldn't have said that on this broadcast, but he in the trenches with us, and he's also the founder of the Baltimore rap battle scene with pit fights, and he's in the trenches using his gifts to do what's necessary. Come on, Shaq, bless us with a few words or something, man.
You on mute, Shaq?
Unmute your mic, Shaq.
Yeah, I'm used to not talking on these on these shows. That's why. But no, I'm just glad to be part of this, and you know, I like to see active brothers. You know, I'm not someone who sits still when it's time to move, and I like to see people who activate it. You know what I mean? I like to see activated brothers, and I like to see people who are activated before it's time to activate. You know what I mean? So. Who's always on go? Who's always
proactive?
That's right. Exactly. Who's always doing what needs to be done? As much as possible. No one's perfect, but y'all get what I'm saying. So I'm blessed to be in this type of company, and let's keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we not getting a bunch of questions. I'm gonna give Tavon the opportunity. First of all, bro, I give you my gratitude. We met as teenagers a long time ago, and by God's power, we've been brought back together to do the great work that we do in our city, down in our vocation, and in other places, man. You know, you facilitated this thing. I knew I wasn't gonna be able to facilitate tonight and be a contributor. You came in, you facilitated and did what you do. And I thank you and appreciate you going. And got anything you want to say?
No, man. Again, I'm just grateful to be a part of this conversation, to sit amongst what I'm going to call giants. You guys are on the streets. You guys are doing the work, and to be informed and to be educated by not only what you know, by what you have experienced and what you do. I'm grateful for that. So I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Brother Ray. Thank you, Brother Sean. Thank you, Brother Dwayne. Thank you, Marvin, for allowing this opportunity, man. I appreciate it.
Shout, Miss Helen Washington says she put up a question. Please find it for me, because I ain't trying to get beat up the next time I'm walking down the street. She's a wonderful educator, man, and a brilliant sister. I'm coming to the closing remarks, Ray. I wanted to save y'all for last, so it will be uninterrupted. So if we can find that question, Shock, and get it thrown up there, and we can go ahead and get people to put a little bit on it. Then what we actually going to do, and I'm not giving a closing statement. I've said all I plan to say today. I want my guests to give us our closing remarks, and I'm gonna close with a word of prayer.
Real quick, if her comments are not on the original post, if it's on the watch party, it's not showing up here. All the comments here are from the original post. So everything
you hear that,
from
Helen Washington? Post. Helen Washington, you would need to go out of the watch party into my post that's coming, the stream that's coming off my page, and post your question, and then we'll be able to get it up on the screen. So that's what we're going to do. I am Marvin McKinstry, the pastor of Victory House Worship Center. So we're going to get ready to shut it down this way. Again, I appreciate all our guests, our panelists, our more than capable facilitator, Mr. Tavon Thomas, our engineer, Mr. Shaka Pitts. I'm going to throw it to my little brother, Sean, and Sean is going to give us his final thoughts. I'm going to throw it to my brother, Ray Kelly, and my final thoughts is going to be a word of prayer, and we out.
Man, as always, man, I don't always connect with my big bro Marvin, my big bro Ray, but best believe, man, any opportunity that I have to, conversate and have a little bit of casual dialogue with these brothers, man, I go away from the conversation a wiser person and more informed. So one thing that I would like to say to everybody that's viewing is, man, we living in some tough times right now, and the most important thing is that we're conscious of how we discern the times. Man, pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to the things that's being said. Pay attention to the things that's not being said, man, and always understand that for every action, there's a reaction. So just be cautious and be wise in your decision making, and learn what to pay attention to, man. It's a lot of stuff that gets thrown up on social media that will appeal to our emotions, that will have us in an emotional state where we want to go out there and act on impulse. Slow it down, think about what's going on, put it in proper context, pray for discernment, and move and move in God, man.
Come on, Ray, you got it, big bro.
So I just want to first thank you guys for putting this stuff together, man. This is what we need to do. This is how we move forward, is through conversations. And then I want to Marvin and Sean, man, it's like, I can remember us 5 years ago doing these riots and how much we've grown and how we've educated each other and then passed that on into our communities. And that's what we have to do. I always say, get involved and be involved and stay involved. But I'm seeing tonight the reality of what happens when people actually do that. And then you have this panel of strong Black male leaders in our community that's willing to step up and organize so we can continue to move forward. So I will say that if you have issues with public safety, or if you want to get something off your chest, I'm accessible. And if my job is to take that feedback from the street. So if you got something you want to get off your chest, you want to have a conversation about any incidents, reach out. I'm accessible. I'm sure y'all can get my information. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank
you again, Ray. So Monday, 6 p.m., Senator Jill Carter, Brother Davon Love. I'm working on getting Dr. Danielle Kushner, who's a former member of the CODIF and a professor, to come on with me. But Monday, we definitely already have locked and loaded. Monday is 6, Senator Jill Carter, and Brother Davon Love from Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle that's going to come on and talk about the legislative side. The title for that particular show is going to be, how do we fix the problem in with legislation? All right. Then on Thursday, I know it might be coming a little back to back, but I got to grab these opportunities. We're going to have a conversation that's going to talk about whatever the outcome of Tuesday's election is. We're going to have a conversation about how it impacts the work that's already being done and the work that will need to be done to curb the violence in Baltimore. So I already have booked and locked in for Thursday, Brother Munir Bahar of the Core Institute and the original founder of the 300 Men March. I'm working to get some others for this particular show. I only want people that do the ground level work of intervention towards changing the dynamic of violence and crime in our city. So I got Brother Munir. I'm not going to announce other names because I haven't been able to speak with them to get confirmations, but we're working to get that confirmed for Thursday. I have one very special guest that I need to just give her the opportunity to say hi to the people because she's here with me. Y'all know her on my social media platforms as Babe. Mama sat here. She wanted to be with me through this show tonight, my first show. Mama, you want to say anything to the people? Hello, she learned a lot, but I learned most of what I know from her. So we're going to close out with a word of prayer. Father God, we thank you tonight for everything that's been said. God, for a strategic and an informed conversation, a dialogue, oh God, that's rooted in an understanding that it takes reconciliation to fix the problems that are going on in our city. God, we just ask that tonight you continue to work with these leaders and leaders across the city, the state, and this nation, especially in a critical time like this. God, you would stay the hand of the agitator. You would stay the hand of the aggravator. And that you would stay the hand of any enemy that looks to be a provocateur at this time to cause anything that would be harmful to the agenda that we know you've already set in place. God, we just thank you for the privilege and opportunity to be able to come together and to share with your people. Thus says the Lord, as you've engrafted it on our hearts towards the work that you've given us the privilege to do. Now, God, as we descend from this place and this platform, I ask that all of the listeners, oh God, you would be a blessing in their household, in their families. You would be a blessing in the work that they do. Bless the great men that joined me on this panel tonight and all the work that they do, and continue to create the opportunity for us to be able to come and speak truth to power. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Thank you again for tuning in to the Chop Shop. Every time you come on here, we're going to keep it real. It's going to be informed, and it's going to be unhinged, and we're going to speak truth. The Chop Shop, be with us, because we're going to be here. Thank you.
No doubt. See you, baby.